right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Fearcast. This is the podcast dedicated to OCD and anxiety spectrum disorders and getting your life back. I'm your host, Kevin Foss, and I'm a licensed therapist specializing in OCD and anxiety disorders. Thank you all so much for joining for another episode today. So this episode, we're going to be going back to the emails. I've got a fun question today. This is confidently a question that we've never had before, so I'm excited for it. So excited that we'll see how it goes. We'll see how if I try to get an expert in on this to talk about this at another episode, but it's, as we'll talk about, it may be hard to do. But before I get into that, for those of you who are new, this is a question and answer based podcast. You, the listener, can send me, the podcaster, therapist guy, questions about OCD and anxiety disorders, and I will read them, consider them, and likely put them up on a future episode, as I'm doing today. Now, if you would like to, before that, if you want to ask your question, go over to fearcastpodcast.com. You can send your question in over there. Now, every episode you've ever had is up there. Of course, you can always go to iTunes or Spotify or wherever else you get your podcast. It's probably there as well. Now, if you would like to cut the line of all the other questions that we have in the backlog, you can send me a question via audio. So send your audio question over probably at Instagram. It's probably the easiest. I'm Fearcast Podcast over at the Instagrams. Send me a DM. Click on the microphone button, record your question. It'll get to me. I will listen to it. And again, you can put a fake name up there. No one will know it is you. And that's the best part about the anonymity of this process. So you can also email it to me. If you record it on your phone, email it to me at questions@fearcastpodcast.com, and I'll put it up on a future episode. Anyhow, so this question is going to be a fun one today. You know what? I have nothing else fun to say at the top of this. I am also exhausted again today. It was one of those wake up a bunch of times last night with the kid, because that's what happens when you're a parent. So we're just going to get through this. I've got my coffee. I hope you have your coffee, and we're all going to get through this. Okay. So let's just jump into it. So this question comes from Max. So Max emailed me this question a while ago, and I'm glad I finally was able to get to it. So he asks, he asks, Dear Kevin, very, very formal, first off. Thank you. Thank you for sharing your expertise on this podcast series. I find it very helpful. In the last 6 months, I've been struggling with what I believe to be an under-researched form of OCD based on my internet research of medical journals, referred to as, quote, intrusive medical imagery. In a few words, it's a short. It is short pieces of familiar music. They say 5 to 10 seconds long, playing on continuous loop in my mind. This is 24/7 in the waking hours, unless distracted by other music playing in the environment I'm in. I find it tremendously debilitating, leading to severe anxiety and impacting my functioning. Have you ever come across this? And do you think that this should indeed be seen and treated as OCD? If so, would you have any thoughts on how to approach this treatment / learn to how to approach the treatment or learn to live with it? Thank you so much for your help. Kind regards, Max. Max, thank you so much for this question. Thank you so much for this question for a number of reasons. One, as I've mentioned before, this whole podcast runs on your questions. When I run out of questions, I'll just probably fold up the podcast. Why keep doing it if I'm not getting questions? I could interview people and bring stuff on and, I don't know, make stuff up. I've never made up a question, but I could, present stuff. But what's the point in that? The OCD stories exist. Other podcasts exist. The Fearcast does not, or the Fearcast exists because of the question and answer based format. So every question I am going to care for and tend to and likely put it up on a future episode at some point. So Max, thank you for sending that question in. Okay, so why I like this question is because it made me go online. It made me start searching for this to read a little bit more about this and to see that clearly there's a name to it. Clearly other people are struggling with this, Max, you included, and It is there is a name and some suggestions on what can be done with it. So I'll talk just briefly about what it is, how some research has differentiated it, what recommendations some people make. I'm going to be referencing my notes a lot for this. So if you're watching this over on YouTube, and by the way, I'm on YouTube now, so I'm putting the video up for this. You can see me talk about this. You can see the question written out. So it's just going to be another way for me to try to get content out. We'll see how creative I get with that, but it's been a fun outlet so far. All right. So again, what's cool about this is that it also puts a name to something that I have also experienced. And I'll give a couple of further examples of that as we go. But Max is absolutely right. Max, you're right. There isn't a ton of information out there on this. There are a couple of articles that are unfortunately behind paywalls, and I'm going to try to have to hunt some of those down. So we'll see how I can acquire some of those through reasonable and legitimate means, but I'll get them. But there's not a lot of information out there for folks to have and to access. So it makes it tough to really try to treat it or address it or to normalize this for folks out there. I mean, one of the advantages of OCD land is that there's a bajillion resources out there now, which is great. There's podcasts and articles and YouTube channels and books and conferences, and there's a ton of information out there. But there's still more stuff to research and more stuff to find. And when there's not an article out there, it can make someone feel like they are the only person experiencing it. And that's the way it went for a really long time. In fact, in the process of doing this, I came across some research that was just talking about the early days of OCD research and trying to narrow in on this. And one research article called OCD, a Silent Epidemic, something that was, and this was an article, I think it was published in 1989, I could be wrong on that date, but it was by Janicki, I do remember that, but it was basically something that is occurring a lot more than they initially thought it was occurring. People thought it was incredibly rare to experience OCD, and perhaps it was rare in the way that, people don't talk about it. There's that shame or that stigma or that worry that I'm the only person and everyone's going to think that I'm a big old weirdo if I share this, right? And, very obvious things, when it becomes so severe and so debilitating, that's when it was first probably noticed. And anyways, it wasn't until a bunch of research that it started to pull this out. All right, so Max, let's get into what this is. And I'm going to be reading from some articles that I'd put together on what this is, on what intrusive musical imagery is. And I'm curious to see if other listeners out there experience this too, if this kind of puts a name to something they've experienced for a while. And also to see if I can, maybe draw a difference or draw a line between, where is it, should it be treated as OCD or should it not be treated as OCD? And so I'll jump into that in a little bit. So in this research that I did, so it came across as this. So intrusive musical imagery is otherwise known as earworms or involuntary musical imagery. And there's earworms. It sounds like that's the German way of saying it. Basically, it's earworms. So it's just kind of think about like it's this like kind of song that just kind of creeps and crawls into your ear and just gets stuck in your head and it's never going to leave. And I think we've all kind of experienced this to a certain degree, which is where it's interesting to then have a name to it, right? But it says intrusive musical imagery occur in more than 85% of the general population without pathology or ear disease. So it occurs with the vast majority of people without pathology, meaning without like a name or a diagnosable mental health or physical health issue. It involves the involuntary repetition of 15 to 30 seconds of a fragment of music/tune, music/tune, pertaining or persisting like a looping soundtrack. Persisting like a looping soundtrack. Now, musical obsessions are a rare form of intrusive imagery, occurring either with other symptoms of OCD or isolated. So the song stuck syndrome is what they call it, like the song stuck in your head. It is recurrent, persistent, intrusive, unintentional, time-consuming, and causes distress or functional impairment. It says, although not as ego-dystonic and aversive as unusually intrusive visual imagery are. Anyways, let's go on. So this also separates it from another part of this. I'm trying to bounce around with my notes. This is not helpful as an audio medium. All right. It separates this as well from what's called musical hallucinations. So musical hallucinations can be linked to a psychiatric disease, but they're more common to neurological diseases. So like, delirium, drug-induced cerebral lesions, like really bad brain stuff. And they're reported to do with, they have less controllability, they have less lyrical content, which is interesting, lower familiarity. So it's not like a tune that you've heard all the time. It's like this thing that it seems like they're making up, or it seems like it's more novel. And I thought this was interesting as well for musical hallucinations, differentiating that from intrusive musical imagery. It feels less. It feels more of an external source. So it's not like the song in my head. It is perceived as a song that they're hearing that's outside of them. So, anyways. More detail. So it gives some examples of what earworms can be. So they say earworms or earworm songs usually have a fast-paced tempo, easy to remember melody. However, earworms can also tend to have unusual intervals or repetitions that make them stand out from other songs. So if you think back to a song that might have popped up in your head, and think about if it follows that sort of pattern. Is it kind of fast-paced, kind of an easy kind of bubblegum melody to it, or does it have these kind of funky or interesting intervals or repetitions that make them stand out? It gives some of these examples. So it says, "Don't Stop Believing," "Bad Romance" by Lady Gaga, the song "Somebody I Used to Know." Now, when that song popped up, or when I just simply read that, immediately I got that song, the marimba or whatever instrument that is, playing that little hook, and that has an interesting interval setup. "California Girls" by Katy Perry, "Bohemian Rhapsody," and this isn't mentioned, but this has 100% been an earworm for myself, is "Disturbia" by Rihanna. So all of these songs, they're a little up-tempo, they're catchy, they are a little bit repetitive in some of the ways, in some aspects of it, and they're kind of creative in the way that they present. So think about those songs for you if that resonates with you. Now again, some research was done to find who's more susceptible to having this thing happen to them. So one, they said research shows that OCD traits do present some correlation and some more likelihood that you're going to have this. Now, interestingly, it separated this from folks who have more intrusive thoughts are more likely to have intrusive musical imagery rather than someone who just has more contamination stuff. So, if your obsessions are more thought-based, you're more likely to have it than someone who is more, kind of externally based. Now, I thought this was super interesting. Musical experience or musical expertise made the earworm tend to be more sophisticated. It didn't mean that musical expertise meant that you were more likely to have it, but it meant that the song that's going to be an earworm for you is probably going to be a little bit more complex, more complicated than someone who has less musical expertise. So if you continue to go down this rabbit hole, again, I went down a short rabbit hole today. It talked about antidotes. So we'll take this with a grain of salt, especially in the world of compulsions, right? We want to make sure that we're not giving into compulsions, as it were. But you all know that. Why am I saying that? All right, so here's some antidotes that some things recommend. So it says repetition can make it continue unless it can come to some type of climax, right? Or conclusion, right? At some point, does it have an ending to it, or are you just playing that one little snippet? Okay, so getting to some sort of climax with it, or like playing the song all the way through. One article recommended chewing gum. So chewing gum, they say it interrupts the sub-vocal rehearsal component of auditory short-term or working memory associated with generating and manipulating auditory musical images. Basically, I think it's distracting that part of the brain, right? It's short-circuiting your short-term memory and doing something else that tends to interrupt that process. So, and I'll talk a little bit about that later on. They recommend, quote, cure songs. Cure songs can include God Save the King, or, a couple of years ago it'd be God Save the Queen, or Happy Birthday. So I suppose very repetitive, very simple sort of songs that we've heard a bajillion times. Interestingly, an antidote they recommend is a song at a lower pitch or a lower tempo. As I mentioned before, listening to the song from start to finish. So grabbing that song, playing it from start to finish is what they say can help be an antidote to it. And they also recommend asking yourself, why is it that this song is stuck in your head? Why is it for you in your brain? So oh my gosh, excuse me, I burped. Oh. Damn you, coffee, got me. All right, so it's basically, why is the song? It's a lot of the songs that get stuck in my head, I would say, well, probably because they're really catchy, or they're fun, or there is a great musical tone to some of the instruments, or I like the vocal tone that they have, or whatever it might be. So it might be that you like it. It might be there's a content aspect that you hate about it, but they recommend it could be, an antidote could be considering whether or not, why is it stuck in your head? Which brings me to whether or not it should be OCD or should be treated as OCD. So this is a good question. It's a good question whether or not it should be treated as OCD. Now, I think my main concern for this is going to be, or defining characteristic. If it's a problem, then it's a problem. Max, it's a problem for you. Therefore, it's a problem. Does it follow that same OCD pattern? There's a pattern of unwanted intrusive thoughts that generally causes anxiety that is dealt with through compulsive behaviors, and through those compulsive behaviors reinforces the cycle, right? Is it following that sort of pattern? And then I would question, Max, for you or for anybody else out there, if it is a problem, what part of it is the problem? And I'll wager to say it is the compulsion part that is the problem that's maintaining it. So in other words, the effort to try to get rid of it is ultimately the problem. And I want to address that in a little bit. But if it's not a problem, it's simply a phenomenon that you're experiencing. So I'll share a little bit about my experience. I get this a lot. So in fact, again, as I mentioned, when I read the Gaudier song, just the title, immediately that melody popped in my head. I knew exactly what it was. Generally speaking, when I wake up in the morning, there's some snippet of a song playing in my head. I just kind of know it's going to be there. And, superstitiously, perhaps I consider that, well, if I got a song stuck in my head, it's going to be a decent day. It's going to be an okay day. I have no research behind that, nor do I have any evidence for it. So I don't know, brain weird superstition. But it just kind of shows up. So I've also experienced this through extended periods of time. I remember going fishing with my dad, going kayak fishing. So if you go kayak fishing, as you can imagine, you're in the ocean, you're on a kayak, it's just you're boating around and you're trying to catch some fish. It's as simple as that. For 8 hours, I had the Maroon 5 song Payphone stuck in my head. And not the whole song, like the verse. And not even that, just like the simple, a couple lines. Again, 15 to 30 seconds of a song. I mean, it fits it. Similarly, I went backpacking a number of years ago. We did 4 days on the John Muir Trail, going, in the backcountry and then up and over Mount Whitney. For most of that, I had a song called Crossing Muddy Waters stuck in my head. Great song, but stuck in my head. But again, I didn't treat it as a problem. It was just kind of a thing that I've experienced as part of my life. It's there. It's going to show up from time to time. Now, as a amateur musician, I'll say if I'm preparing for a show where we're playing, an hour's worth of music, if I'm going to be practicing that, I'm going to be playing that more and more just to prep for it. I'm going to have those songs stuck in my head. So a song on repetition, a song that I'm involving myself with, that I'm invested in, it's probably going to show up for me a heck of a lot more. Similarly, I was talking to one of the clinicians at Cal OCD, Anna Chen. She was talking about kind of popular TikTok songs or kind of similar short form video songs that are common in different videos. And she says those songs tend to show up in her head more often than other songs. So that's another way that earworms can show up. So again, if it's a problem, it's a problem. It sounds like, Max, for you, it's become a problem. And if that's the case, if this has showed up in my office, I would likely be treating this in the realm of hyper-awareness. I'd be treating this as if someone is paying far too much attention to a song, far too much attention to a stimulus, I should say. Let's broaden that out. Now, we've done a number of episodes on hyper-awareness and sensory motor OCD in the past. So every bit of that is going to be applying in this scenario as well. Now, should it be a diagnosed subtype of OCD? I don't know, but what I would say is it sounds like it could be treated through similar techniques as hyper-awareness OCD. So with hyper-awareness, some of the process that we're going to be looking at, hyper-awareness, we should go through that. It is simply a subtype of OCD, some type of OCD, just checking to see if my next client is here. I still got some time. So hyper-awareness OCD, where it is an intrusive thought about something around us that we're just hyper-focused on. And sometimes the thought to that is this ever going to go away? Is this going to distract me forever? Am I ever going to be able to focus on something on in my life? Why do I have to have this? And compulsions are often done to try to eliminate the thought in their head, trying to distract themselves. And avoidance is another really common one that tends to happen. So from that perspective, from Max, from what you're talking about, it sounds like it may sit within that world, in which case, I think we should treat it as hyper-awareness. So what do? First things first is we want to try to get into some cognitive restructuring. And I want to ask, why is this a problem? What is so bad about it? And that's where that kind of core fear, that story comes in. Why is this so bad? Is it that it's going to be stuck in your head forever and you're never going to focus on something? What is it about it that's so bad? And then we're going to try to pull that apart and try to get to the bottom of why this song is particularly problematic for you, and to see if we can come to a different resolution or a different understanding or relationship with your thoughts, with that song, with what it means to be simply distracted in life, because we're going to be distracted in life. I'm distracted now as I'm recording this, so we're going to be distracted. So how do we develop a resiliency to the fact that we are going to be distracted as people, whether we like it or not? And we have to be able to make space for those distractions in order to live life and live in tandem, live in two different worlds. The one where you're focused on the thing that you're trying to focus on, and this thing over here that is just living in your brain rent-free and is bothering you and just frustrates you to no end. And yet we have to live with it despite it, knowing that it's going to go away, right? So this is also something that I'll remind everybody that I work with. These obsessions, these worries, this anxiety will always go away. It always has, and it always will. So with this thought, this melody is eventually going to go away. Okay, the Maroon 5 song Disturbia, those songs are not in my head unless I start to think about them, and they crop back up because, again, they're great songs. So it will be replaced by something else. You'll be distracted by something else. So we can let it go. We've talked about the 10-minute mindset before. All right. We've talked about the 10-minute mindset before. And the 10-minute mindset is if you knew that song was going to fall out of your head in 10 minutes, what would you do with it? Would you argue with it, avoid it, be angry at it? Would you try to, cover your ears and yell really loud? Or would you do nothing and just kind of go, all right, 10 minutes. I'm going to get back to or refocus on the thing that I want to be focusing on. I'm willing to bet that second part rather than fighting with it. This will go away. And if it's not 10 minutes, it's 20 minutes. It might be an hour. It might be 8 hours. But it'll go away. It will. and then it'll come back, and then it'll go away. But I'll tell you, if you're then turning your attention towards and hyper-focusing on that song and getting so pissed off, it's likely to be there much longer and with a lot more intensity than if you were to let it be part of your day. So this also leads us to acceptance. Acceptance of the reality of what is happening, not the, quote, reality of what could happen, right? In this moment, we need to accept what is happening. And Max, for you, in that moment, that song is stuck in your head. It is. But what else is happening? What else is happening? Not what might happen, not what could happen, not what should happen, but what is. Because when we can accept what is, then we can do something with it. Then we can move past it or forward or through it and have it be there or not while we focus on the present moment. Not beating ourselves up or getting angry at that song, but moving forward with it. So similarly, it's, that point about not accepting what isn't happening. The song isn't stuck in your head forever because you haven't lived forever to know that it's stuck in your head forever, right? We don't know that it's going to distract you from every aspect of your life. We do know that right now it's distracting, it's annoying, but there's a lot of things that are distracting or annoying in life. And you find a way to live with those too. So we need to make space for this one too. And it can be a weird way to do, it can be a weird thought to consider, but it's one of the things that we do. Now, in terms of exposure and response prevention, I think when it comes to, a lot of times when it comes to hyper-awareness or sensory motor obsessions, I think the best thing is acceptance and a letting go of compulsive behaviors to try to get rid of it, instead letting it play its course. Right? I think there's going to be the temptation for some folks out there to go to those the antidotes that I mentioned previously and to try those over and over and over again. And guess what? Sometimes they might work, but sometimes they might not. And if they don't, we do need to practice acceptance. So with exposure and response prevention, we want to be allowing that thought to be there while practicing response prevention by letting go of our efforts to try to get rid of it. Now, likely speaking, here's why I think acceptance is more important, because Max, in your day-to-day, you are already exposed to it. It's already there. Why have to do it more, right? Instead, that's the time to practice acceptance, right? Now, for those of you who are dead set on trying exposures, here are some ideas. Set it as your ringtone on your phone and have people call you. Now, I know we're in the world of, there used to be a time, by the way, when someone would call your cell phone, you'd want a ringtone. There's a whole industry set up around ringtones. Now, it's all silent. I am surprised if my phone rings. I don't know about y'all, but it's like if it rings, I'm like, something's wrong. I need to reset my phone. So but you would set it as your ringtone and have it be there. Now, you could start your day with it. Jump out ahead of it, right? So wake up in the morning, play that song, play it 10 times, play it 20 times. Just go, yep, it's there. Put one earbud in and go throughout your morning. Get your coffee, get your breakfast, do what you got to do and have that song play. And we're making space for it as part of your day, as part of your life, not as your enemy, right? The other part I would say is allow yourself to get distracted by other things, right? So we've talked about the Yap app, where you can set a reminder on your phone to randomly text you or distract you from life. And that can be a way for you to practice getting distracted by something and then redirecting back to your life. Because you can set up that app to randomly send you a notification, and then it's going to go off randomly as it says. And then you're going to get distracted. You're going to be in class. You're going to be in a meeting. You're going to be somewhere. And it's going to go off. And you're going to go, oh, let me check my thing. And then you're going to go, oh, it's that crap again. All right, well, let me shift. And instead of getting angry at the distraction, it's going to be part of your life. You go, all right, it's there. Whatever, I'm going to let go of it. So continuously practicing that and that mental redirection. You can also practice attention training. That's something that you could practice, you could try. I did an episode recently on that, so you can go back and listen to that. There's a bajillion other articles and things like that online for it. So, Max, I know this is a quick episode, and I probably have to get to my person because they are indeed here now. So thank you all so much for listening, and thank you all so much for watching if you're over at YouTube. So until next time, everybody, take a risk, challenge yourself, and don't take your brain too seriously. Bye. Thank you for listening to the Fearcast. If you would like your question answered on a future episode, please click on the Submit a Question link at fearcastpodcast.com. If you would like your question answered sooner, please send me a recording of your question to questions@fearcastpodcast.com, or by sending me an audio message through Instagram by DMing me at fearcastpodcast on Instagram. If you like the Fearcast, please write a review on your podcast platform of choice. Please remember that the Fearcast is not a substitute for psychotherapy. If you need a little bit of help in your recovery, please go over to fearcastpodcast.com and click on the Find Help link, and there's going to be some information for you there. So until next time, take a risk, challenge yourself, and don't take your brain too seriously. Bye.